Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. Thank you for being here. I am so excited that you've decided to tune into this week's episode. It is going to be one of the most important topics we talk about because it's a universal fear. I don't know one single soul, unless there's some other secondary personality disorder, that isn't afraid of being rejected. And I thought it was an important conversation for us to dive into, to explore, to hold space for. So we're going to go into 10 tips for overcoming your fear of rejection. We're going to be defining rejection. What is it exactly? How do we define it? What are the types of rejection? And then how do we work through it? How do we tend to this fear that plagues us, shackles us, and keeps us in shame and kind of a bondage in our own heads? And it creates anxiety, depression, loneliness. So we're going to dive into all things related to rejection today. Before that, be sure to download the journal. I created a 5-day journal and it walks you through what I walk clients through, and you can get it for free at Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, boice.com/free resources, and it will be delivered to your inbox. And then you also will get each week the latest and greatest episode and other blog posts, videos, important information in your healing journey. Don't want to spam you. And if you find this episode helpful in any way, I would love it if you would share it with somebody that it could also help. I'm on a mission to transform and rehab the way we think about emotional wellness and have deeper conversations as part of our general interaction with people. Instead of just the surfacey, how are you? I'm fine, which is feelings inside not expressed. We are creating more connection because we are so lonely in the world right now. And in order to create deeper connections, this is a great caveat to start the conversation with, hey, did you hear that episode on rejection? What are you afraid of? Like, what scares you when you're putting yourself out there? And then we begin to normalize that we are not so different, because when we feel different, it creates shame. When we feel like we're different than everybody else, we feel like there's something wrong with us, which is shame. It's about ourselves, whereas versus guilt is about our choices. And so when you share this on social media, it helps more people find the episode, or if you just share it straight from your phone. I am so grateful, because when one more person gets the information they need to know they're not alone, we are helping find healing and connection with others. So you can also post it on social at Kristen D. Boyce. You can do that on Instagram or Facebook. And if you want to follow along on Twitter, it's just Kristen Boyce. Pinterest, I'm on there. I'm on all the platforms. So you can find me either Kristen D. Boyce or Kristen Boyce, but mainly Kristen D. Boyce. And I would love to connect with you. So I just want to say you matter and you're important. And I love you, and I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive into this important topic today. And this may be one that you want to take some notes with, but if you're working out, if you're driving, if you're walking, you can listen to this and then come back to it when you need it most. So let's define rejection. As I was researching today's topic, I always like to start with a definition so we can get on the same page in what we're talking about when it comes to rejection. And I also want to tap into vulnerability, because when we think of rejection, a vulnerability is associated with that. So here's the first definition of rejection. Rejection is a refusal to accept, approve, or support something. When you think of that definition, what came up for me is it's so based on another person and based on their own history, their own potential trauma history or life experiences. We're giving our power away to somebody else to approve of us versus us proving of us. And if you have spirituality or faith as part of your journey, you will know that you are loved and accepted no matter what. It's just part of being a human. We know we're going to learn in this lifetime that's the journey, is learning how to love ourselves and other people. That is it. It's so many pains and traumas and hurts that get in the way of loving ourselves and other people, and so much fear. We're going to talk about that because that's the topic of our conversation today, fear of rejection and putting ourselves out there. Okay, the second definition I ran into was a refusal to show someone the love and kindness that they need or expect. Whew, there it is again, a refusal. That word refusal. And yet we're putting so much of our worth into somebody else and what they think of us. And that word refusal may be their own 99.9% of the time. It's their own stuff. It's their own pain. It's their own blocks. And it's their own shame of not feeling good enough that blocks them from the ability to accept themselves. When we can accept themselves, oftentimes we can accept other people. It doesn't mean we don't have boundaries, what's okay and what's not okay. It means that we're less judgmental because we're less critical of ourselves. Okay. The third definition is rejection is the feeling that someone does not love or want you. Whew. The feeling that someone does not love or want you. How many of us, and I say us, I can feel the tears almost coming up just thinking of all of you and all of us who have walked through being rejected or feeling rejection. And I heard this a long time ago and it stuck with me. What feels like rejection is God's protection. And yet, when we're in the middle of feeling rejected, we don't feel like it's protection. We feel hurt. We feel pain. We feel shame. We feel grief. We feel loss. We feel depressed, anxious, however you want to frame that, because we feel like, what's wrong with me that you don't love or accept me? Or what's wrong with me that I didn't get the job or get the promotion? What's wrong with me that you didn't invite me out in the social group where you invited everybody else out in the neighborhood, but you didn't invite me? What's wrong with me that I didn't get accepted into this college or this graduate program? What's wrong with me that I'm not a part of this popular friend group or the group in general at work or with socially? What's wrong with me that this person I loved and I really liked didn't like me back? They didn't find me attractive. They didn't want me. They didn't want to be with me. And we take that so painful because we feel so vulnerable, which is risk of emotional exposure. That's what vulnerability is, that it takes us down the shame spiral. And I want to help you today shift, heal, nurture, move through that fear. So you're not hiding, people pleasing, pretending, perfecting, performing to get worth and value, to get someone to like you. Because guess what? They have their own traumas. They have their own blocks that they may be incapable of offering you what you crave and what you need. We have to do that ourselves. I have to do that for myself. That's where the power comes in. I'm going to walk you through the 10 tips on how to work through this. But let's break down the types of rejection because there's many different types. And it helps us just to kind of frame up the conversation today. That's why I like to start with the definition. We can start with the types. We can start with what causes it. And then we can move to the 10 tips. That's the application. That's the practical steps on how do we move through this. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's an evolution. It's a process. So there's 3 types. One is if you've been rejected in your family system. So it can be from, you might even feel rejected being adopted. You might have been in the foster care system, and that feels like rejection from your family of origin, your birth family. Perhaps you've had a parent that has left and you have felt abandoned by them. Maybe there was a divorce and you felt rejected by one parent, or maybe you got triangulated in, which means you got put in the middle of a conflict between both of your parents that had nothing to do with you. And as a result, you felt disconnected, sad, grief because you weren't able to connect with both of your parents. Maybe you had a death in the family and that kind of felt like a rejection. And that can be deep and wide. When you have a family rejection, we're neurobiologically wired to belong, to be, this is Dr. Dan Siegel's work, to be seen for who we are, to be soothed. That means in infancy, you're being held, you're being nurtured, you're being cuddled, you're being like, they have baby massages. You're being connected with emotionally with your eye contact. That's why it's so concerning with phones right now, giving babies phones and parents having phones, because we're missing that attachment work where the baby is trying to connect with the parent. The way they know how is through the face and the body and their nervous system. And when you're consistently soothed and held and rocked and sung to and cooed at, and mirrored back the feelings, there's what then turns into a felt sense of safety and security. You begin to feel secure with who you are. So seen, soothed, secure, and safe. Those are the 4 S's that Dr. Dan Siegel came up with in terms of attachment and feeling that consistently. Those 4 consistently, then you will develop what we call a secure attachment. You will feel like you know how to self-soothe because you were soothed. You can see yourself and accept yourself for who you were because that was offered to you. You then feel like you can handle and tolerate your emotions. You don't feel threatened or scared by them or overwhelmed by them. You may occasionally, but you feel like you can handle it. And you will oftentimes be able to come back to center and come back to calm if you get dysregulated or triggered. And that is because you had consistency of a primary caregiver offering those to you. Now, most of us did not get that. So we're like, well, then what, Kristen? I didn't get those things. It's okay. You're okay. We can learn how to self-soothe by working through those triggers and dysregulated parts or the self-protective parts, the traumatized parts, to be able to come back to center and feel more secure. That's why I love therapy. That's why I love EMDR. I've talked about it so many times. Eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's a form of trauma therapy, brain spotting, somatic experiencing, internal family systems. There's many modalities and they can be used in combination, but it really is about the relationship you have with the therapist to feel safe enough to go back and reprocess those family system traumas. So it's important you start identifying, where did my fear of rejection begin? So we can begin nurturing that, working through that, tending to that. It's not a permanent situation where you feel like, well, I'm permanently damaged. No, you're not. That is not true. That is a false belief that you might have felt conditioned to believe, but it's not true. I have seen people heal from the most traumatic abuse, emotional and physical neglect, and traumas that you would think no one could heal from. You can, I promise you, but it takes time. It's not like it's an overnight healing. It's a willingness to sit with discomfort. It's a willingness to connect with those emotions and body sensations. It's a willingness to work through those defense mechanisms that have been automatic and that are now maladaptive in your life. So it's important to understand the origins of where your fear of rejection came from. And so if you know you have a rejection or a perceived rejection in your family system, it's important you're taking time to heal what was not able to be healed back when you were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2, 3, 4, 5, or even in infancy. If you were in the hospital for extended period of time as an infant and you really needed to get held and you were in an incubator, that affects you. That affects your nervous system. That affects you feeling separate, like anxiety, separation anxiety. That affects your nervous system and your ability to regulate. And you might not have an implicit or explicit memory. You might have an implicit memory, which means you don't have a memory you can pull from. You might have some body sensations that come up regularly that can be tended to and nurtured and reprocessed. Okay, number 2. So we have the first type of rejection is a family system rejection or family rejection. Number 2 is a social rejection. This is in social situations. If you can float back to childhood, I remember I went out for cheerleading every year, like clockwork. I don't know why, but I thought if I was a cheerleader, then maybe I would feel enough and I would feel accepted, popular, liked. And so I would go out every year and I liked it. I thought I liked it at least. Who knows? I was looking for acceptance. Never made it. So that was a feeling. I would go up to the wall. They would post the list of who made it. I'd go up to that wall in front of all the kids, and the ones that made it would get excited, of course, because that would be exciting. And I would just stare at the wall and then go cry. And then next year I try out again. And it really was a longing to belong and feel enough. Like that was going to be the ticket to me feeling enough, which is a sham. It's not true. But at that age in middle school is what I thought. So that would be kind of a social rejection, right? That I feel socially that I wasn't good enough. So that's an example of that. Maybe it's a friend group that you wanted to belong to and they didn't let you sit there at lunch. Or I remember my freshman year going with my tray of food and going, who am I going to sit with? And that pit in my stomach. And I have to manage that with my own kids because I can't project that onto them because I have to self-soothe that, even though that has been an experience for one of my kiddos. At one point, it happens. And I have to manage my inner child, my little girl, and not project that onto them so I can be emotionally regulated and available for them. And we probably have a lot of examples of social rejection going all the way from little girl, boys, little souls, all the way up. And so it's important to kind of identify which ones really impacted you and how they impacted you. So we're looking at roots of things. I am not a Band-Aid therapist. We're going to just think our way through it and we're going to move on. It's so much deeper than just thinking your way through it. That's part of it, but it's connecting to those emotions that you perhaps didn't get to process in real time, along with the body sensations. And where did the origins of these beliefs about yourself come from? And experiences shape our fears, or hearing things shape our fears, or things we've been told. So it's important to identify those. Number 3 is romantic relationships, friendships. These are just relationships in general that you've had that you've felt rejection in. How many romantic relationships have you felt rejected in? I can go back to remember in elementary school or middle school, and we like, do you like me? Check yes or no. Man, we would really put it out there. Or if you had, your first crush, and can you go back and remember what that was like? And maybe you didn't put yourself out there. Maybe you did. And what happened? And maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe it was a relationship you were in for a long time and you found out there was a betrayal, which feels like a major rejection. Like, what's wrong with me that they're going to go with somebody else instead of me? And that is due to that attachment wound. So if you didn't get your 4 S's, seen, soothed, safety, and secure consistently from your primary caregivers, you're looking for it in all the wrong places. Instead of giving it to yourself, you're thinking those love romantic relationships will give it to you. And then come to find out that no, you didn't get that there either, because you have to offer it to yourself. That's icing on the cake. So we can all kind of go back to that. Maybe you've had a work environment. That could also be relationships, but that may be in the social category as well. So some of these may overlap. Number 4 is maybe you've been rejected from work, where you applied for a job, or maybe you got fired, or maybe they reorged and eliminated your job. And that feels like rejection, or maybe you didn't get the promotion that you wanted and somebody else did. So those are the types of rejections. There's many more, but I wanted to classify the main ones that I work with most often with clients. Those are the ones: family, social, romantic relationships or friendships, and then work situation, careers. So it's important for you to explore where you might have felt rejected or had a perception that you were rejected. Because where there's rejection or perceived rejection, there is pain that needs to be processed. So where there is rejection, past or present, there is pain. And pain looks like sadness, fear, anger, disgust, grief. And that all needs to be tended to. Otherwise, it's like a leaky boat and you're projecting that, you're putting that on different people or situations that it's not really connected to. You're displacing those emotions because you're so afraid of being rejected. And we have different ways of defending against it. We might shut down. We might hide. We might people please. We might perform. We might become a perfectionist. We might be an achiever. We might be a workaholic. We might get critical. We might stonewall, which means that you're really kind of just flat. You're not really, you kind of play Switzerland And you're like, I don't know. I don't know. It's used as a defense to not get in trouble or say the wrong thing or have people reject you or get mad at you. And we have developed all these defense mechanisms. I've done several episodes on defenses that you can go back and listen to that plays into try to protect yourself from the fear of shame, blame, judgment, rejection, abandonment. So let's talk about the 10 tips for overcoming, working through your fear of rejection. We're all afraid to be rejected. I need to make sure we're clear on that. How do you face it? Not numb it, not move away from it, not pretend, not hide, not live in a fantasy. How do we live in truth so we can face, tolerate, self-soothe through that fear? Okay, so we're going to get to it. Number one, this is my number one tip. I'm not going to start from the back. I'm starting from the front. So number one, we have to take our deep breaths. You know this because I tell you, if you're new to the podcast, deep breathing is something I teach every client. Feet on the floor. We call it square breathing. Deep inhale through your nose for 4. We hold for 4 and a slow exhale out our mouth. So let's do it together right now. If you're listening to this, I need you breathing. Don't skip it. Do it with me. So inhale, hold, and exhale slowly out your mouth like you're cooling soup. Just check in, see how you're slowing things down. When we get afraid or anxious, we speed up, especially when we're working with our kids or our partners or at work, or we're feeling really anxious. You'll hear people, if they're public speaking, they'll start talking really fast. And you got to slow it down. And how we slow it down is get into your body, feel your feet on the floor. So there you're grounding, and then you're breathing. And then it's still step 1. We're acknowledging your emotions. We're not ignoring them because that's what was done to you in childhood, perhaps. We're tending to them. We are nurturing them. We are processing them by naming them, noticing where you feel them in your body. We're connecting to them so they can move up and out. They can move up and out like a wave, a wave, a wave, up and out, up and out, up and out. We're not disconnecting from them. Some modalities are teaching a disconnected view of emotions, and we can't really release them if we're disconnected from them. We have to notice where they live in the body. Like, for example, when I get afraid, I know my fear lives in my stomach. Sometimes it's in my throat. And so I have to tend to it. I have to go, okay, now how do I feel? What am I feeling? And it's often my inner child that needs attention and attunement. It needs to be seen, soothed, to feel safe and secure. And I'm going to offer that to her because she needs that, really, to myself. Okay, so number 1, we're breathing and we are acknowledging your emotions. We are not bypassing them. We are not minimizing, not dismissing, denying, pretending. We are letting them have a voice. We are letting them tell us the truth about what's really going on inside you, because we didn't get that opportunity as children, and it becomes maladaptive now. That's why you're so afraid of rejection. You're afraid of the pain. You're afraid of feeling that pain again. And when you can go, I can handle it. I can nurture myself. I know what to do. You're going to be less afraid of the pain. And I'm going to give you an example of this. Okay. So most of us have had to get shots in our lifetime, whatever kind of shot it is. It might be a vaccination. It might be a flu shot. It might be whatever shot. It's part of taking care of yourself. Now, we're going to take all the vaccination arguments off the table. Just work with me on this analogy. We all have to get shots, and many people have fear of a shot, including myself. I do not like them. I can go back to childhood and I have memories of getting shot. I had no skills. I had no tools. I had no ability to learn how to soothe myself through the shot. And when my mother was present, if she was anxious and not able to soothe, she wasn't able to offer me the ability to soothe. That's why holding your child tenderly, softly rubbing them, you being regulated during high intense times helps them learn how to self-soothe. So I have not, and I mean not like shots. And I've worked myself through, how do I nurture myself? How do I soothe myself? How do I prepare so I can handle and tolerate the pain? And again, the pain may be a second. The pain may be a little longer. Nobody likes to feel pain. Some people do want pain because it makes them actually feel something. And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm making this analogy so you can buy into the ability to handle the pain and have a window of tolerance for it and nurture yourself through it by breathing and tolerating. So I had to have a procedure done. This was a while ago, and it was no anesthesia, but they needed to get a sample. Whew. So I had to use all the tools I'm teaching you and put them into play. I had to. I didn't have to, but I chose to. I needed to get the sample, and I could feel the flop response. If you listen to a couple weeks ago, I did an episode on the freeze response, and there is a flop response, which is a faint response essentially. And if I get too flooded in pain, my flop response will take over and I'll faint. So I had to prepare myself. So what I did was feel my feet on the floor. I found a spot on the wall. I nurtured myself. I said, honey, you can handle this. Take some deep breaths. I literally focused on breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth, in through my nose, out through my nose, and soothing myself, saying, you got this. You're okay. You can handle this. I'm literally talking to myself like I would somebody that's scared. But I had to learn that because we aren't taught this. And so I also was able to just I had a soft shirt on. So I kind of was able to touch the shirt, nurture myself through that. Sometimes even giving yourself like a little squeeze, a little hug. Anyways, the whole point of this is if you're going to work through any kind of fear you have to be willing to lean into the discomfort and tolerate and know that you can handle. And that's what I work with clients, is being able to handle it. And that's what my 10 tips are. So we are using these tools on a regular basis, not just when you're under distress or when you're afraid. You got to work on these proactively. So when fear comes up, you're like, okay, honey, I got you. I know how to help you through fear. Number 2, process through past experiences of feeling or being rejected, feeling as if you were rejected or being rejected. Remember, rejection is God's protection. It often leads us to greener pastures, even though we don't feel like that in the moment. I can look back at all of it and go, oh, that was for my bet. That was for my highest good. But we don't think about that in the moment. No, we're thinking about the hurt, the fear of being alone forever or never being enough and never having the job we need or making the money or never finding love again. And we can't see past that because we're so future oriented and we're so much in the shame that we have to process past experiences through either therapy, journaling, identifying and processing what you're feeling. And I'm going to go through a lot of these. We could go through therapy and EMDR. We can do brain spotting. We can do some body work. And that helps release all of that. It doesn't mean it never comes back, but when it comes back, we're like, oh, that's my 4-year-old self. That has to do with the time that I was left in the grocery store. I'm making this up. I really wasn't left in the grocery store, but that has happened to people. And you know how to nurture yourself back through it. So let's talk about number 3, perspective taking. Watch that you aren't catastrophizing. I see when we get in a high level of anxiety, we catastrophize and we go into the what if. What if they say this to me? What if they do that? What if I'm not able to handle it? What if I am not able to get a handle on my emotions? And instead of just saying, I'm going to focus on the here and now, we go to the catastrophizing, worst case scenarioing it. So then if it happens, we're like, see, I predicted it. I'm okay. It's like waiting for the next shoe to drop. Well, I knew that was going to happen. So I'm okay, but really we're not processing it. It's almost like a defense mechanism. So watch catastrophizing and take perspective and put things in perspective to say, okay, what's true and what's not really true? What is rooted in my past that I need to work through that I'm projecting onto the future? Let's look at what my little soul inside is trying to tell me versus the reality of the situation. And then we can deal with the reality. Number 4, manage your expectations. Expectations are resentments waiting to happen. And what we expect to happen often doesn't happen. And then we're let down and then we have anxiety and then we feel like we're not good enough and then we have shame. So our expectations of ourselves and other people oftentimes aren't realistic and they're based on unmet needs. They're based on our wounds and what we think will heal it. So if I expect that my kids will always be compliant and mannerly and never yell at me or never be dysregulated, it's a sham. That is just not reality. That's an unrealistic expectation. I see this a lot in couples therapy where they go in and go, he or she should know what I like. Okay, that's really not true. Even if we've told them, we have to be clear and direct and communicate what we like and what we don't like, what we want and what we don't want. And sometimes they're not realistic. It's based on a movie. It's based on a fantasy of what we hoped would be the case and not reality. So you have to watch your expectations and check them, because oftentimes what we put on other people is a hope and a fantasy rather than reality, what's realistic and what's not. So in a romantic relationship, we may have this expectation that if I text the person, they're going to text me within an hour. And that might not be possible. And so we have to check that expectation. That's a simple one. So manage the expectations realistically. Number 5, work on your ability to self-soothe and self-regulate in a healthy way. You need to develop skills and coping mechanisms. I wish they did teach this in school, and they are starting to, which is wonderful, to self-soothe. Because remember, we had that one of the S's was soothing. If we're not self-soothing, we're looking to other people or other things to soothe us. We're looking outside of ourselves for that soothing, just like we did when we were infants, which was appropriate, which was neurobiologically wired to have our primary caregiver soothe us. As adults, that goes back to infancy, and we have to learn how to soothe ourselves, not some substance, not alcohol, not sex, not another relationship, not achievement, not the house, not the money, not the car, not the weight loss, not the facelift. That's not going to soothe you. You think that will prevent rejection. You think all those things will help you not be rejected. And the reality is you're rejecting yourself. You're not accepting or soothing yourself and accepting who you are. You're looking at what will make you acceptable, what will make you lovable. What will make you lovable is you loving yourself. And that sounds so, just love yourself. And we want to go, want, want, want. But really what it is, it's loving the inner child parts of ourselves that I've been teaching on this podcast. And it's not easy. We don't all just love ourselves and we're not kumbaya-ing everything. It's a real rumble. It's a real deep dive into the inner critic and those hurt, wounded parts that we're told we weren't good. We were told we were bad. We were shamed. We were punished, which is disconnection in a relationship, which is what we're so afraid of. We were shunned. We were disciplined and put and separated from our parent or primary caregiver. We were neglected emotionally. We're not blaming anybody. This is just speaking truth of what really happened so we can heal. I'm a truth teller. Bring it to the light so we can transform it. If you don't speak truth with love and grace, we cannot transform what's going on the inside. It's impossible. That's why I love doing this work, to bring to the light your truth. Okay, number 6, explore your fear of being rejected. Like, what is it you're really afraid of? Are you afraid of being alone? Are you afraid of being in a shame spiral? Are you afraid of your own emotions? Are you afraid you'll never get through the pain and you'll be stuck in it forever? Which probably means you've been stuck in past pain that you haven't gotten through. So if you're stuck in pain now, I want you to check to see if there's a deeper pain there that never got tended to and it kind of got displaced on your current pain. Is there deeper pain that you haven't dealt with? If so, I'm not your therapist, but it's time to deal with that deeper pain in a safe environment with a healthy therapist that can help walk you through it if available. And again, universities often have graduate counseling clinics that they'll do therapy at no charge. Churches sometimes have a counseling if it's a healthy church, right? I disclaim everything. There are options to get therapy. And I know right now there's a shortage of mental health providers. Keep listening to podcasts, reading books, journaling, naming out loud, even if you're by yourself in your car, what you're feeling, and offering yourself compassion. Number 7, face your fear by having conversations instead of avoiding. So one of the things I have clients do is we role play conversations out loud. So they can just try on, and you can do this in the mirror even. You can even tape record it. See, I'm dating myself to the 80s, but you can do it on your phone, on your voice app, and say it out loud into the voice memo. So you're practicing in the mirror, recording it, saying what you need to say instead of avoiding it. So for example, if you feel rejected by somebody, it might be, I'm feeling sad and scared to tell you how I really feel because I'm creating a story that you really are not that into me. Is that true? I love adding, is that true at the end? Check your stories. Now, you have to be prepared for the answer. And this is where people are like, I don't want to know the answer. Well, you avoiding wanting to know the answer is keeping you stuck. Don't you want to know if somebody likes you as much as you like them? It's scary, yes. And I'd rather know the truth and move on. I'd rather not invest all my energy in something that isn't a mutual feeling back. That's your inner child looking for something based on an unmet need, either soothing, to be seen, that you didn't get, and you're looking in this relationship that they don't have it to offer. And sometimes they do because they feel secure, they've done their own work, they're on a growth trajectory like you are, great. But you have to face the fear by role playing. And so in therapy, we'll do role plays. Even though we can't predict what the other person's going to say, they get the confidence up to start communicating with an I feel statement in there, using a feeling in there, and being clear and direct and telling the truth about how they feel with love and grace. This isn't vomiting on somebody. So we have to face the fear instead of avoidance. We got to break the pattern of avoidance. It keeps people stuck. It keeps you shackled. There's no progress when you're avoiding things. And I do it in my own life. And I realize, oh, I'm stuck. I'm procrastinating. I'm avoiding. Okay. Number 8, build a support network. And you can start with, let's say, a grief group. Maybe you need CODA, Codependence Anonymous 12-step program. Maybe you need AA. Maybe you need Al-Anon. Maybe you need just to start, like we talked about, therapy. Maybe you need 1 or 2 friendships that you can be 100% yourself and tell the truth about how you're really feeling with love and grace, and they accept you. And there's no shame in that. And if you have one friend, you've hit the lotto. Honestly, if you have one friend that you can do this with, if you have 2, you've really hit the jackpot. You have to have a huge group of people. You have to start trusting yourself, and then you can start opening up to emotionally healthy people. That's why I love when you share podcasts like this, then you're starting to have a support network because they're willing to listen to the episode. You guys can talk about it. You can talk about when you've been rejected, how that's been for you. Where did you get stuck in it? Now you're having deeper conversations with friends, with your partner, with coworkers. There's nothing better. Now we're building authentic relationships. That's why I hope and pray that this can help you with building the support system. And it's a platform to get you started in having these conversations. So, hey, did you listen to yesterday's episode or did you listen to last week's episode? Oh my gosh, it was about overcoming your fear of rejection. And I've been playing small and I've been not opening up because I was so afraid of judgment and people thinking less of me. And it reminded me of the time in 7th grade when I switched schools and I was new and I was so afraid of not belonging. And then I tried out for cheerleading. I'm making this, you get the idea, but see how we're starting a deeper conversation? We're getting to know each other on a deeper level, and we can be authentic and real and tell the truth about how we're feeling. This is a nice entry point into that by sharing these episodes. And the reason I'm saying that is because I know the healing and the transformation that comes when you have other people on a growth journey with you. It can be lonely if you're the only one doing this work. And I get that. I realize that. That's why I try to work intentionally on building friendships that also are willing to have these conversations. So it's not, how's the weather? Well, that's fine and dandy. I do not feel connected. And not that every conversation has to be this deep connected conversation, because that's not realistic, nor would that be healthy either. But I do crave, and I know many of you do too, much deeper conversations, much deeper, more authentic, real connections. And you can create those, I promise you. But it starts with you. If you're not willing to connect emotionally, you're not going to source other people that are wanting to connect emotionally. If you're disconnected from your emotions and you're so busy and you're perfecting and you're people pleasing and you're not really taking the time to connect and center, you're probably not going to pick people that are taking the time to connect and center and that have growth mindset. So you doing this creates another subset of people because you'll start recognizing and feeling when you have more authenticity in your relationships. Number 9, this is an important one. Develop a plan for nurturing your fears. What do I mean? Okay, let's be real. Your fear of rejection isn't just going to disappear. We want to make it less. There'll be moments in time in your life where it will pop up. You'll have a new social interaction And here it is, the fear of rejection. You're starting a new relationship. You're starting a new job. You're meeting your kids' friends, parents. You are in new environments and new situations. Your fear of rejection or starting a new project or putting yourself out there in a different way, it's going to come up because you're human. You need a plan. So what's the plan? Here's some ideas for writing out a plan for when you're afraid of rejection. Put that at the top. My plan when I feel afraid of rejection. First of all, you're going to write a letter to yourself, acknowledging that fear and letting that younger part of you know that you're there. You can handle the emotions. You will help them through the feelings. You will help them be able to self-soothe. So now you are going to be the ideal parent that you might not have gotten. There's no such thing as perfect parenting, but you're now going to be the soothing parent that sees those wounded parts and offer space, unconditional love, and you're going to acknowledge the hurt and pain and their fear. Okay. In the letter. So write, if you can identify. So for me, 6 in my mind as a part was when my parents got divorced. And I keep a letter to my 8-year-old self, loving her, letting her know she's seen. I'm seeing her. She's safe. She's secure. I have clients that have gotten pictures of themselves at the age that they're going to write the letter to, put it in front of you, and you're going to write that letter to that little boy or little girl or little soul inside. And you're going to acknowledge her. You're going to acknowledge him. You're going to acknowledge them, the pain, the fear, the sadness. And you're going to work through acknowledging that it's okay to be who you are. It's safe to be who you are. In that, you might also, in your plan, identify a song list that would be good, and you can have it pre-made. If you need a song list to help you soothe your nervous system, you're going to have the song list. So music can be very soothing. You might go pet your dog, your cat, whatever animal you might have, spend time with them, walking them. It's a dog, walk the dog. Journal, you might put in there journal. Prayer, spend some time praying or centering the Holy Spirit or whatever works for you. Meditation, you might put some friends that can be on your phone a friend list. When you're in a shame spiral, you really need some extra support. Or if you're in a 12-step program or a sponsor or a mentor you might have that you could put down. You might schedule a therapy session. EMDR, brain spotting, somatic experiencing, internal family systems. You might go for a walk in nature. You might be outside. You might decide you're going to go exercise, whatever you're physically able to do. And you're going to remind yourself that what healthy looks like is processing your emotions and not numbing the pain, facing the pain, sitting in the discomfort by doing all these things. And sometimes we just have to sit and cry. Honestly, sometimes I just need to sit and have a good cry and then put myself to bed through some listening to kind of a meditation. And then tomorrow's a new day. If you feel suicidal, you're going to call 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-TALK, or text 741-741. Do not do this alone. Suicide is because you're so much in pain and you're trying to make the pain stop. There is ways through the pain. I promise you. I wouldn't do this work if I didn't believe that. I've walked through so many people in so much pain, and there is hope. And I know when you're in it, you don't see it. And that makes sense. No need to go into shame over that. And then the last, number 10, it's not really the last, but this is integrated all the way throughout, is self-compassion, to be kinder, more nurturing to yourself. That is soothing. That is seeing the pain and not bypassing it, minimizing it, dismissing it, rationalizing it, trying to make it go away and fixing it. It's actually saying, yeah, that makes sense, you're in pain. And it's okay. It's okay to let it out. It's okay. I mean, not to hurt anybody, but it's okay to process it. And when we give ourselves permission to process, we are on the healing path. We are on the healing path. And so when you get a fear of rejection and you're afraid to put yourself out there, these are ways that you can go, you know what? Being myself is actually healthy and a way that empowers you to break toxic patterns. Hiding, pleasing, mitigate, all the ways we've already talked about keep you stuck. They keep you stuck. And so we kind of have to face the fear. That's the bottom line. If you don't face it, you don't heal it. If you don't face it, you don't move through it. And if you don't face it, you're stuck in the past. I know that sounds big. The possibilities are endless when you decide to face the fear. Breathe through it. nurture yourself through it. I love putting signs up. So right on your mirror, you got this, you can handle this. I love you. I'm going to take care of you. It's okay to have your feelings, whatever works for you. And write what you're grateful for at the same time. Focus on what you're grateful for and acknowledge when you do face your fear, acknowledge it, celebrate it. Go, you go, girl. Like I want to cheer you on. You go, girl. Whatever. You go. You did it. You faced it. And I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you because you could have kept avoiding the fear. You could have kept just staying stuck and frozen in time. And what you did is you decided to face it, even though the outcome might not be what you want it to be. Maybe it is. We're unattached to the outcome. We're cutting the cord on needing the outcome to be a certain way to be enough. It's a sham. The outcome is the outcome. You can handle it. You are enough. And your willingness to grow, accept yourself for who you are, accept that you have feelings, and that's okay. To accept that everybody's got pain and you're going to face it. That is huge. And I'm so proud of you. And I am so grateful you're listening today because we are on this journey together. And I hope this is a support to you in all ways. Some things may trigger you, and that makes sense. Write it out to get it out. Thank you for listening. I hope these top 10 tips on working through your fear of rejection help you to know that your worth and value does not come from somebody else or something else outside of you. No, sorry, Bob. We cannot put that much on that. You accepting you. That's how we move through the fear of rejection. You loving you, you nurturing you, you accepting that you have hurts and feelings and emotions. That's the key. Thanks for listening. And I cannot wait to be with you again next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, Kristen, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.